Snow whipped through the night, fierce, endless, unforgiving. Then, through the blinding storm, a wounded K9 mother appeared, her paws dragged through blood and ice. In her jaws, a black bag, heavy, precious. The hospital doors slid open with a hiss. Doctors froze. No leash, no collar, just a scarred police harness. Her amber eyes locked on theirs, pleading, desperate, full of purpose. When the security chief reached for the bag, she growled, low, broken, protective. Something inside clinked like metal. "That's not just any dog," he whispered. "That's a K9, and a mother." And when Dr. Daniel Harris finally unzipped that black bag, no one in Pine Creek would ever be the same again. Minnesota didn't just have winters. It was built from them. By evening, the storm had buried every road and fence line in white. Wind screamed across Pine Creek, a small forgotten mill town that looked like it had been dropped inside a snow globe and shaken too hard. Power lines swayed, lights flickered, and the few souls still out on the streets moved like ghosts behind scarves and hoods. Out on County 17, something crawled through the storm. At first it looked like a shadow fighting the wind. Then headlights from a distant truck caught the glint of ice, and the shadow became a dog, a female German shepherd, large, powerful, and hurt. Blood streaked her left shoulder, freezing into dark crystals on her fur. The tag on her torn harness read faintly, K9 Unit, Cole. Her name, though only one man had ever spoken it, was Bella. Bella was 5 years old, bred for duty and loyal beyond reason. Her once glossy coat was now stiff with frost, her breathing shallow and harsh. Every step left a smear of red on the snow. But even through pain, she held her head high, clenching something in her jaws, a black medical bag, heavy and soaked at the bottom. Inside, wrapped in a soldier's wool blanket, something small whimpered. The wind whipped at Bella's ears. She stopped once, panting, her breath turning to fog. Then she saw it. A light through the white. Pine Creek Memorial Hospital, the only beacon for miles. She lowered her head and pushed on. The automatic doors shuddered open as if startled by the storm. Warm light spilled across the entrance just as Bella staggered inside. Her paws slipped on the tile. Claws scraped. A nurse at the front desk looked up and froze mid-sentence. The German shepherd was covered in blood and snow, her amber eyes bright with intelligence and desperation. No leash, no collar, just a shredded harness that had clearly seen war. "What on earth?" the nurse whispered. The dog didn't answer, of course. She only dragged the black bag further into the lobby, then laid it down with astonishing care. The sound of metal clinking inside made everyone flinch. At that moment, Bobby Teague, the hospital's night maintenance man, stepped from behind the supply cart. He was in his late 40s, heavy around the shoulders, his orange beanie dusted with snow. "She's not just some stray," he murmured. "Look at her. That's a K9. The dog growled low, warning them away from the bag. The sound wasn't angry. It was protective. Her muscles trembled, her wound reopened, but she stood her ground. Carrie Monroe, a triage nurse barely 30, with wheat blonde hair braided tight and freckles that made her look younger than she was, moved carefully around the counter. She'd volunteered at the animal shelter since high school and knew what fear looked like in both people and dogs. "Easy, sweetheart," she said softly. "You made it. You're safe now." Bella's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her ears flicked toward Carrie's voice. The scent of antiseptic and clean cotton filled her nostrils, human, but not hostile. Her tail quivered, uncertain. Carrie crouched 2 arms' lengths away, palms out. "I'm not taking it, girl. Just let me help." From the far hallway came hurried footsteps. Dr. Daniel Harris appeared, lab coat flying open like a sail. At 56, he moved slower than he wanted, but faster than most men half his age. His square jaw was dusted with gray stubble, and deep lines framed his eyes, the kind that came from seeing too much and sleeping too little. He had once been a military medic before returning to small-town medicine, trading war zones for farm accidents and heart attacks. But storms like this, they brought the war back in strange ways. "What do we have?" he asked, already scanning the scene. Carrie pointed. "She walked in on her own, sir. She's hurt. Bad. And that bag?" The dog's gaze snapped to him. Daniel stopped mid-step. He saw it immediately. Not a wild dog, but a soldier still on duty. He knelt, ignoring the protest from his knees. "Hey there, partner," he murmured, voice low and steady. "You've come a long way." Bella's breath fogged between them. Her tail twitched once, then stilled. The man smelled like salt, soap, and old exhaustion. Not a threat. Slowly, she eased the bag forward across the tile until it touched the toe of his boot. "Good girl," Daniel whispered. Bobby crossed himself. Carrie held her breath. The wind howled against the glass doors, as if trying to listen in. Daniel reached for the zipper, but not immediately. Years in the field had taught him respect for the wounded, for silence, for things that carried their own gravity. The bag was heavy, warm against the cold air, and something inside shifted faintly, brushing against the fabric. "Please don't be what I think it is," Carrie muttered. Daniel didn't reply. He unfastened the first inch of the zipper. A faint, impossible warmth touched his fingers, not from the heater, but from within. He looked at the dog. Her amber eyes locked on his, waiting. "Whatever you carried here," he said quietly, "we'll take care of it." The zipper slid halfway down. A soft, fragile sound rose from inside, not mechanical, not metallic. It was a whimper, high and human. Carrie gasped. "Oh my God!" Daniel's hands froze. He looked up at Bobby, whose face had gone pale beneath the fluorescent light. Then back at the bag. The sound came again, faint, rhythmic, alive. Daniel exhaled through his nose, slow and steady. "Blanket," he said. Carrie tore one from the gurney behind her. The shepherd took one shaking step forward, her paws leaving small red moons on the tile. She lowered herself beside the bag, chest pressed to the floor, ears pinned back as if bracing for judgment. Her breathing came in short, dry sobs that didn't belong to animals. Daniel tugged the zipper open, the rest of the way. Inside, wrapped in wool and tucked between gauze packs and medical tape, lay a tiny infant, face flushed from the cold, but still breathing. Barely. A hospital bracelet dangled from her wrist. Emma Grace Cole. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Even the storm outside seemed to hold its breath. Carrie pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. "She's alive." Daniel's chest tightened. The name Cole hit him like a memory. Officer Mark Cole, a police handler killed in the line of duty 6 months ago. His partner's K9 had gone missing the same night. "You've got to be kidding me," he whispered. He looked at the shepherd, the scars, the harness, the intelligence burning through exhaustion. "You found her," he said. "You really found her." Bella's eyes softened. For the first time, her tail gave a single slow wag. Then she exhaled, a long, trembling breath, and sank to the floor. Her head rested near the baby's tiny hand, as if making sure it was still there. Daniel pressed his stethoscope to the infant's chest. "Weak pulse, but steady. Get her to NICU now." Carrie lifted the baby carefully, wrapping her in the warm blanket. The shepherd didn't move, only watched as they carried the bundle down the hallway. Her eyes followed until the doors swung closed. Then, finally, she let go. Not of the bag, but of consciousness itself. Daniel caught her head before it hit the tile. "Stay with me, girl," he said, voice breaking in the quiet. "You're not done yet." Outside, the storm raged on, but inside Pine Creek Memorial Hospital, the world had changed. The hospital doors flung wide again as a gust of icy wind tore through the ER, scattering papers across the floor and snapping the corner of a chart pinned to the wall. The storm outside hadn't eased. It had only grown angrier, drumming against the glass like a wild heartbeat. Inside, however, time had slowed to a fragile rhythm. One breath for the baby, one for the dog, one for the people trying to keep both alive. Dr. Daniel Harris knelt beside the German shepherd, his gloved hand pressed to her neck. The pulse beneath his fingers fluttered weakly, like a dying spark trying to catch flame. "Stay with me, girl," he whispered. Her fur was slick with blood and meltwater. His fingertips came away crimson. "You've done enough, but don't you give up now." The nurse, Carrie Monroe, returned from the NICU doors, voice shaking. "The baby's stable, for now. Hypothermic, but breathing on her own. We're warming her up." Her blue eyes darted down to the floor where Bella lay motionless. "What about her?" Daniel wiped his forehead with the back of his wrist. "She's lost a lot of blood. Bullet wound, upper left shoulder, might have nicked the lung. We need X-ray, fluids, and someone who knows how to handle a K9 before she wakes up." Carrie looked around. "Animal control's 2 towns over. They'll never make it in this weather." "Then it's just us," Daniel said simply. He met her gaze, tired, resolute, the way a man looks when the universe gives him no choice but to care. "Get me a surgical tray, clamps, saline, and morphine, small dose. We're doing this right here." Carrie hesitated. "Sir, hospital policy." "Carrie," Daniel interrupted gently but firmly, "that dog carried a human baby through a blizzard. If that doesn't earn her an exception, nothing does." She nodded once and sprinted down the corridor. Bobby Teague hovered near the doorway, hat twisted in his hands. "You want me to clear the lobby?" "Yeah," Daniel said, checking Bella's gums, pale. "And shut the outer doors tight. I don't want her bleeding out because we can't keep the heat in." The building moaned under the wind as Bobby moved off. For a moment, Daniel could hear only the faint hum of emergency lights and the rasp of Bella's breathing. He glanced at the torn harness around her chest, noting the faded letters. K9 Unit, M. Cole. Mark Cole, he murmured, memory threading its way back. He'd treated that name once, months ago. A police officer caught in an explosion on County Line Road. The man had died before sunrise. His dog reported missing. Daniel stared at the shepherd. "So you made it out, didn't you, girl? You kept your promise." Carrie reappeared, arms full of medical supplies, cheeks flushed from running. "Got everything I could find that's sterile." "Good." Daniel tore open a packet of gauze and pressed it against the wound. Blood welled instantly through the white. "This bullet's been in her a while. It's not fresh. Infection's setting in. She's been running like this for hours, maybe days." He slid a syringe into her vein, hand steady. "Morphine, low dose. Let her rest." Bella twitched but didn't resist. Her eyes fluttered half open, pupils wide, glassy with exhaustion. For a second, they locked on his face. Daniel felt the same jolt he'd known years ago when holding the hand of a soldier too far gone to save. Recognition without words, respect without rank. "Easy," he whispered. "You're home now." Carrie knelt beside him, wiping the blood away as best she could. "Do you really think she understood what she was doing?" Daniel gave a faint, weary smile. "I think she knew exactly what she was doing. Some of them just never stop serving." They worked in silence after that. The room smelled of iodine and iron. The storm thundered outside, but inside the small ER bay, a kind of sacred stillness grew, a quiet that only happens when people refuse to let life slip away. After 40 minutes, the bleeding slowed. Bella's breathing steadied, though each exhale came with a tremor. Daniel leaned back, hands shaking. She'll need a real surgery later once we get a vet here, but she's alive. Carrie exhaled shakily, wiping her forehead. And the baby? Daniel's voice softened. You said stable? Yeah, pinking up fast. Temperature's rising. She's got that fighter's heart. Carrie smiled faintly, just like her dog. Daniel almost smiled too, but it faded as a thought crossed his mind. How the hell did she even find this place? We're miles from any police station. Carrie shrugged. Instinct, maybe? He looked down at the torn harness again. Or loyalty. Across the hall, behind glass, the infant named Emma Grace Cole lay inside a heated incubator, her tiny hands curled like blossoms. The bracelet around her wrist matched the one Daniel remembered signing off months ago on her father's medical report. The coincidence made his stomach twist. The ER lights flickered once. Outside, a transformer popped. Bobby shouted from the front desk. Power's shaky. Generator's humming, but she's working hard. Keep it going, Daniel called back. If we lose heat, that baby won't make it through the night. He turned to Carrie. Go check on the NICU heater. Make sure it's plugged into the emergency line. When she left, Daniel stood over the shepherd. He rested a palm gently on her flank. You're safe now, Bella, he said quietly. You did what no human could have done tonight. Her chest rose, slow and shallow. Then her ear twitched. At first he thought it was just muscle memory, but then he heard it. A faint sound, not from her, but from the corridor beyond the glass doors. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Daniel's instincts prickled. He straightened. The security monitor above the reception desk flickered, from static to a blur of movement. Someone outside, pushing against the wind. Bobby's voice crackled through the intercom. Doc, you expecting anyone else tonight? No. 'Cause somebody's out there. Daniel crossed the lobby, peering through the snow-streaked doors. The storm made the parking lot a boiling sea of white, but in the headlights of an ambulance, he saw a shadow staggering toward the entrance. A man, maybe, or what was left of one. He grabbed the intercom. Bobby, lock that door until I say otherwise. The figure hit the glass, palms smearing it with red. A man's voice, muffled by the storm. Help, please. Daniel froze. His brain caught up half a second later. The voice was familiar. He yanked the door open just enough to pull the man inside. Snow exploded across the floor. The stranger collapsed, gasping, his face gray and eyes wild. It was Officer Ryan Walker, one of Pine County's deputies. His badge was bent, his parka torn. Blood seeped through his sleeve. Ryan? Daniel knelt. What happened? Walker grabbed his arm, voice rasping. The woods, North Ridge. There was another man. He was looking for the baby. Daniel's gut turned to ice. What do you mean, looking for her? He had a gun. Said she wasn't supposed to make it out alive. The doctor's pulse hammered in his ears. He looked back toward the hall where the NICU doors stood closed, the faint beeping of monitors barely audible. Behind him, Bella stirred, ears pricking, body tensing despite the morphine. Even half-conscious, she recognized the word danger. Walker's eyes fluttered. He's still out there, he whispered. Said the storm's cover. Gives him one shot. Then his head lolled to the side, unconscious. Daniel rose slowly, eyes on the door, the howling wind beyond it. The storm wasn't the only thing that had come to Pine Creek tonight. Behind him, the wounded shepherd gave a single low growl, hoarse but alive. And in that instant, Daniel understood something he hadn't before. This night wasn't over. It had only just begun. The storm had swallowed Pine Creek whole. Snow piled knee-deep against the hospital walls, howling wind slamming branches against the windows like skeletal hands. The generator's hum was the only sound steady enough to believe in. Inside, under flickering emergency lights, Dr. Daniel Harris stood in the empty hallway, staring at the unconscious deputy lying on the gurney. Officer Ryan Walker's uniform was half frozen, his lips blue, a bullet crease slicing along his arm. Carrie pressed gauze to the wound, while Daniel cleaned around it with shaking hands. "He's in shock," Daniel muttered. "Get a warm blanket, something dry." Carrie nodded and rushed toward supply. Daniel's mind wasn't on the wound. It was on the man's words. He's still out there. Said the storm gives him one shot. One shot at what? At whom? The NICU doors hissed softly nearby, a reminder of the fragile life sleeping inside. Little Emma Grace Cole, alive by miracle, guarded by a dying shepherd who refused to quit. Daniel turned toward the ER bay. Through the glass, Bella lay wrapped in a thermal blanket, IV line snaking from her foreleg. Her breathing was shallow, but her ears twitched at every noise. She was listening. Waiting. Carrie returned, blanket in hand, her face pale under the harsh fluorescent light. "Doc, you really think someone would come after a baby in this weather?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He looked down at Ryan's badge, bent, scorched at the edge, then met her gaze. People have done worse for less. They covered the deputy and rolled him toward the trauma room. Daniel pressed his palm to the intercom switch. "Bobby, lock down every door except the ambulance bay." Static crackled before the maintenance man's voice came through. "Already did, Doc. I'm watching the cameras, but I keep getting interference. Some of the feeds cut out. Keep eyes on the main entrance. If anyone shows up, call me first." "Copy that." Daniel stepped into the ER bay again. Bella's eyes flickered open when he entered. Her gaze fixed on his face, then drifted toward the corridor, ears twitching. He followed her stare, seeing nothing but shadow. "You hear something I don't, huh?" he murmured. She gave a faint whine. The sound chilled him more than the storm ever could. Carrie appeared behind him, voice hushed. "Generator's running low on fuel. If it cuts out, we lose heat, NICU everything." "Then we'll refuel it," Daniel said, though his stomach sank. The backup tank was outside, behind the maintenance shed, 50 yards across open snow. "I'll go." Carrie's eyes widened. "You'll freeze out there." "Not if I move fast. Keep the baby warm. Don't open those doors for anyone but me." She hesitated, then handed him a parka from the coat rack. "At least take this." Daniel pulled it on and grabbed the fuel canister. As he headed toward the side exit, he glanced back once, more at Bella. "Watch over them, girl." The shepherd's tail gave one faint thump. Outside, the world was white chaos. The wind cut like knives, erasing footprints seconds after they were made. Daniel hunched against it, the canister banging against his leg. The generator shed loomed ahead, half buried in snow. He reached it, dropped to his knees, and twisted the fuel cap open. The metal burned his fingers with cold. As the tank filled, he caught a flicker of movement in the corner of his vision, dark against white. A figure. Daniel froze, breath fogging. The man stood 20 feet away, partially obscured by snow, watching him. "Hey!" Daniel shouted over the wind. "This area's restricted." The stranger didn't answer. He took one slow step forward. Even through the blur of snow, Daniel saw the outline of a rifle slung across his chest. Instinct kicked in. Daniel yanked the fuel hose free and bolted toward the hospital. The storm swallowed his footsteps. A crack split the night, the flat, unmistakable sound of a gunshot. Snow exploded inches from his shoulder. He dove behind a drift, heart pounding. The wind howled, covering the shooter's position. He crawled forward, dragging the half-empty canister. Every breath seared his lungs. Another shot rang out, missed again, closer this time. "Move, Harris." He sprinted the last 10 yards, slammed into the emergency door, and punched the access code with trembling fingers. The lock buzzed open. He stumbled inside, gasping, snow spilling across the tile. Carrie was there in seconds, eyes wide. "What happened?" Daniel grabbed her arm. "There's a man out there, armed. He fired twice." Carrie's face went pale. "The deputy said—" "I know what he said." Daniel turned to the radio on the wall. "Bobby, shut down all outer lights. He's using them to see." Static. Then Bobby's voice, shaky. "Doc, I think he's already inside." Daniel froze. "Repeat that." "I saw something on cam 3, motion in the loading bay. Then the feed died. Get to a safe room, lock it." A faint click echoed down the corridor, the unmistakable metallic whisper of a door latch. Carrie's eyes darted toward the sound. "That came from the pediatric wing." Daniel's chest tightened. "The baby." They ran. The corridor lights flickered as they reached the NICU. The doors stood half open, a cold draft seeping through. Daniel motioned for Carrie to stay behind him. His hand hovered over the light switch, but before he could flip it, a low growl rippled through the air. Bella. She was standing now, legs trembling but steady, hackles raised. The IV tube hung from her foreleg, still dripping. Blood matted her fur, but her eyes were alive, sharp, focused, dangerous. "Bella," Daniel whispered. "Easy." The dog didn't take her eyes off the doorway beyond the NICU glass. A shadow moved inside. Daniel crouched, scanning the reflection. The shape of a man appeared, tall, wearing a dark parka, rifle gripped tight. He was searching, slow and deliberate. The muzzle swept across the cribs until it stopped on the incubator. Daniel's throat went dry. He glanced down at Bella. "Not yet," he murmured. But she was already moving. With a burst of motion that defied her wounds, the shepherd lunged through the half-open door. The man spun just as 80 pounds of muscle and fury slammed into him. The rifle clattered to the floor. Carrie screamed. Daniel charged forward. The struggle was violent but brief. The man shoved Bella away, firing blindly. The shot shattered a monitor, sparks flying. The dog hit the ground hard but scrambled back up, snarling, jaws clamping onto the attacker's arm. "Get the baby!" Daniel yelled. Carrie darted past, scooping the infant from the incubator. The gunman shouted, trying to shake the dog loose, but Bella held fast, teeth sunk deep. Blood spattered the wall. Daniel grabbed a metal tray and swung it with everything he had. The blow caught the man's wrist. The rifle dropped again. Bella lunged for the throat this time, forcing him backward into a medical cart. Both crashed to the floor. The man gasped, voice hoarse, familiar somehow. You shouldn't have found her." Daniel froze. "Who are you?" The man's eyes flicked up, wild and unfocused. "You think she's some miracle? You don't know what she carries?" Before Daniel could answer, the man shoved Bella away and staggered toward the side exit. He disappeared into the storm, bleeding, vanishing like smoke. For a moment, the only sound was the storm's scream and Bella's ragged panting. Daniel knelt beside her. Blood soaked her bandage again. "You saved her," he whispered. "You saved all of us." Bella's ears twitched. Her eyes, though heavy, stayed fixed on the baby now cradled in Carrie's arms. Outside, police sirens began to wail, faint through the snow but growing stronger. Daniel exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. It's over. But as he looked out the broken window, the snow shifting like ghosts under red and blue light, he wasn't sure he believed it. Sirens bled into the storm until red and blue washed the snow in bruised light. Pine Creek Memorial felt smaller under it, a stubborn island of warmth surrounded by a frozen sea. Dr. Daniel Harris stood just inside the ER doors as deputies shouldered in, stamping ice from their boots, radios crackling under thick parkas. The air smelled like wet wool, gun oil, and coffee gone bitter on the burner. Sheriff Tom Alvarez took point. Early 50s, broad-shouldered without being bulky, the kind of man who made space feel steadier just by standing in it. His hair was iron gray at the temples, and he wore a mustache trimmed clean as a line of text. Years in law enforcement had written patience into the set of his jaw and caution into the way he kept his hands visible even among his own people. Alvarez had been a Marine before he was a sheriff. The Corps had taught him not to waste words and to keep promises even when no one was watching. When he nodded to Daniel, it was with the gravity of a man greeting another who had just worked past the edge of himself. "You're Harris," Alvarez said, voice low enough it didn't startle the air. "You kept a lot of folks breathing tonight." Daniel shook his head. "The dog did." Through the glass, Bella slept under a thermal blanket, ivy dripping, chest rising in the slow rhythm that says a body has decided, at least for now, to stay. Her coat had been cleaned where they could. Bandages crossed the shoulder wound like white travel lines on a map. She looked smaller on the gurney, younger, but the set of her ears even in sleep held a soldier's discipline. Carrie Monroe came up the hall, cheeks blotched from adrenaline, scrub top spattered with the constellation of a long night. "NICU is secure, Sheriff. Baby's warming, SATs are good. We've doubled blankets and taped the vents to keep the heat in." "Name of the child?" Alvarez asked, flipping a small notebook from his pocket with a hand that had held heavier things. "Emma Grace Cole," Daniel said. "Hospital bracelet was in the bag. Cole, as in Officer Mark Cole." Something flickered across Alvarez's face. A cable pulled through a conduit, but it was gone so fast Daniel could have imagined it. "We'll confirm. I've got state calling about a possible match on a firearm discharge North Ridge side. Tell me about the shooter." Daniel gave the facts in order. The generator, the silhouette in the snow, the shots, the loading bay cam failing, the NICU door, the rifle, Bella's tackle, the line the man had said, "You don't know what she carries." He left nothing out and added nothing in. The sheriff listened like a man building scaffolding in his head. "Walker?" Alvarez asked, meaning Officer Ryan Walker, the deputy who had stumbled in bleeding. "Stable," Daniel said. "Clean through on the arm. He'll be fine." "Good." Alvarez turned slightly as a new figure stepped in from the snow, a woman shaking. Flakes from a dark wool coat, leather folder tucked under one arm. She carried Federal in the tilt of her shoulders, and careful in the way her eyes traveled the room. Special Agent Lauren Pierce introduced herself with a quick flash of credentials. Late 30s, hair a glossed black bob that caught the light, cheekbones cut by good bones rather than knife, and a steadiness that came from too many scenes like this, and a determination not to be made different by them. Her voice held northeast edges smoothed by years of learning to be heard without shouting. Pierce had grown up one county over, in a house where the only framed picture hung above a bookshelf of library cast-offs. Scholarships and grit had brought her through Quantico. Tonight, fatigue underlined the careful eyeliner, but the mind behind her eyes moved clean and fast. "Agent Pierce is task force liaison," Alvarez said. We've been coordinating on a series of irregular adoptions and falsified birth records since the Pine Valley fires. Daniel felt the floor tilt by a degree. Say that again. Pierce studied him a beat the way doctors study a lab result. The wildfires gave cover for a lot of movement. Hospitals full, records scrambled, people displaced. In the smoke, some infants were transferred off books. No paperwork, no parent signatures. We're not talking dozens, but each one is everything. A silence opened, the kind that has a shape. Daniel filled it with the only thing that fit. Emma. We don't know, Pierce said, and the honesty made it easier to hear. But the bracelet number you reported flags an old registry prefix, North Ridge Birthing Center. It closed last year after state inspection. The code shouldn't be in circulation. Carrie folded her arms tight. So somebody kept printing them. Or kept the old reels, Pierce said. Either way, the bracelet on that baby ties to hands that shouldn't be near infants. She angled her head toward the glass and the sleeping shepherd. You said you found the child in the dog's bag? Daniel nodded. Wrapped in a soldier's blanket. The bag felt like it hadn't been meant for a baby at all. Trauma kit, field gear. But there was more. He led them back to the ER bay. The black bag sat on a side table, dried salt on its seams, the zipper's metal throat muted after the shock of what it had first revealed. Daniel lifted it with a care that felt like reverence and tipped it so the inside pocket fell open. From the corner seam, he coaxed a small, flat object wrapped in medical tape, the kind of wrap medics use when they mean not for you, but need it to look like just supplies. He peeled back the tape. A micro SD card slid into his palm. Alvarez exhaled, the sound a low note. Body cam? Looks like it, Daniel said. If it's from Mark, it survived hell to get here. Pierce produced a tamper bag and held it out. Chain of custody, she said softly. An apology threaded into procedure. If this has answers, we'll need to play it clean. Daniel let the card drop into the plastic, a small sound extraordinarily heavy. As he did, something else shifted in the pocket. Thin, metallic, cool as law. He pinched it free. A badge backplate, the kind worn behind a shield to pin it true, etched with a number Daniel couldn't stop his eyes from recognizing. 2719. Alvarez's mouth drew down. That number is from our house. Yours? Pierce asked, pen already moving. Years back, Alvarez said, voice careful, as if sound could crack something fragile. Badge assignments rotate, but 2719, last I saw it, belonged to Sergeant Jared Hanks. Who is Hanks? Daniel asked. 40, Alvarez said. Corn-fed handsome in a recruitment poster way. Married once, divorced quiet. Good at the job on paper. Better at the politics. He took leave after the fires. Family matters. The sheriff's eyes hardened by a shade. He never came back. Pierce's expression didn't change, but the room felt different. If Hanks's backplate traveled in that bag, we have two possibilities. He gave it willingly to someone he trusted, Officer Cole, or someone took it from him. And if the SD card shows Cole meeting with Hanks the night he died, Alvarez said, then we're staring at either a confession or a setup. Daniel glanced at Bella, at the stitched skin and the rise and fall that meant fight even in sleep. Mark died in an explosion, he said quietly. His K9 vanished the same night. Months later, she crawls out of a blizzard with a child wearing a dead clinic's bracelet and a badge backplate in a pocket meant for trauma shears. He looked at Pierce. You're telling me this isn't just a firefight gone wrong? I'm telling you, Pierce said. We've been chasing a trail with too many erased footprints. Tonight you gave us tracks in fresh snow. Bobby's voice scratched into the intercom like a record from another room. Sheriff, got something off the loading bay. When the feed cut, I pulled the cached frames. Sending to your phone now. Alvarez checked the screen. A series of low-res stills marched under his thumb. A figure slipping between the ambulance and the wall, the parka hood blown back for half a second by a gust, a face caught mid-turn, a jag of scar at the jawline like bad sewing, eyes pale as a river ice, a mouth too calm for the weather. Alvarez tilted the phone so Pierce and Daniel could see. Ethan Moore, Pierce said at once, the name a glass bead dropping into a bowl. Private contractor, Afghanistan, later Ukraine, then nowhere on paper. We had him on a short list after Pine Valley. He worked sporadic security details for North Ridge. Disciplined enough to vanish. Proud enough to come back when he thinks you've missed something. He said the baby carries something, Daniel murmured. What did he mean? Pierce stared through the glass at the incubator's silhouette. Sometimes carry is metaphor. Sometimes it's literal. She turned to Carrie. Anything arrive with the infant besides the blanket? A diaper, onesie, bracelet, Carrie said. We logged and bagged them. Check the seams, Pierce said. Every stitch. Carrie went, a new steadiness in her step, the hard comfort of being given a job when fear is a luxury. Alvarez turned to Daniel. One more question, Doc. Why did Cole's dog bring the baby here? Pine Creek is not the closest ER from North Ridge. Daniel looked down at the black bag, at the scuffs only years can polish into leather. His fingers traced a corner seam by habit and found what he hadn't known he was seeking. A set of initials pressed into the canvas where the coating had worn thin. MC, so ordinary you could miss the way fate prints itself small. Because this is where Mark brought people he wanted to live, Daniel said. It wasn't logic. It was faith disguised as a practical answer, which is what faith often is in hospitals. Carrie returned carrying a clear bag of baby clothes, fingers shaking with the kind of adrenaline that comes from being right about something you wish you weren't. Agent Pierce, she said, voice steadying as she held the evidence out. There's a micro drive sewn into the hem of the onesie. Whoever stitched it knew what they were doing. The thread matched perfectly. In the bag, the little white garment looked obscene now, a holy thing carrying a secret. Pierce took it, eyes briefly closing on a breath. Then Moore wasn't talking poetry. He was hunting a delivery vehicle. She glanced at the infant's room, and when she spoke again, her voice had the calm of a loaded plan. We safeguard the child. We image the drive here, no transport in this weather. We view Cole's card with a clean machine and a camera on the screen for a second chain. And Sheriff, no one with a badge in this county gets near that room unless they've been on your short list for 10 years. Alvarez nodded once. I have 3 people. Make it 2, Pierce said softly. Tonight we bet small. A soft sound pulled them all to the glass. Bella had woken, lifting her head as if surfacing from a deep pond. She looked to the NICU door first, as if her mind went to work before memory. Then she found Daniel and held his gaze. Something like a decision passed between them. You did fine, he said, feeling foolish for speaking to an animal until the look in her eyes made him understand foolishness was the wrong word. He put a hand to the glass, as if that could cross the air. You're not done yet, are you? The shepherd blinked slow. Outside, the storm was finally losing its argument with the night, wind thinning, flakes falling fat and lazy instead of horizontal. Dawn would be gray and late, but it would come. Pierce's phone vibrated. A text from a lab across the state border that owed her 2 favors and a slice of holiday pie. Prelim database ping on bracelet number, matched to 2 other infants flagged in the Pine Valley fires. Both never discharged properly. Both gone. She looked up at Daniel and Alvarez. The drive might tell us where the pipeline runs. The card might tell us who turned the valve. She slid both evidence bags into a hard case and latched it with a sound that felt almost like a vow. But the badge number already told us something we didn't want to know. Alvarez's eyes went to the backplate on the tray, then to the snow-streaked window where the reflection of every man in a uniform could be seen, if you wanted it badly enough. He nodded once, an old soldier's promise to an old friend he had not yet named. "All right," he said. "Let's see what's behind this badge." Dawn came slow to Pine Creek, bleeding pale silver through the last tatters of storm. The snow had stopped falling, but the world still held its breath, as if afraid to move and disturb whatever fragile mercy the night had left behind. Inside the hospital, the hum of generators and the faint beep of monitors replaced the wind's howl. Dr. Daniel Harris stood by the observation window, a mug of coffee cooling in his hand. His reflection stared back at him, gray at the temples, eyes ringed in sleepless circles. Behind the glass, Bella slept, her chest lifting steady, wrapped in layers of gauze and quiet dignity. She had made it through another night. "Morning," came a voice behind him. Special Agent Lauren Pierce entered with the kind of calm that made others believe chaos could be managed. She held a hard case under one arm. Her black coat was dusted white, and fatigue shadowed the edges of her voice. "I've set up a secure system in the staff lounge," she said. "We'll run both the SD card and the micro drive there. Sheriff Alvarez is keeping the local feed off the record for now." Daniel nodded. "The less chatter, the better." Pierce hesitated, then added, "You should see this. You knew Mark Cole. You were his physician once. You deserve context." Daniel followed her down the dim hallway. The hospital looked different by morning. Emptier, too still, like a battlefield after the smoke cleared. In the lounge, the blinds were drawn, and a small laptop sat on the table beside a thermos of black coffee and 2 folded evidence bags. Sheriff Tom Alvarez leaned over the setup, glasses perched on his nose. "Everything's local. No network, no uploads," he said. "We're ghosts until we're ready not to be." Pierce slipped the SD card into the reader. The laptop's fan whirred. A black screen flickered to life. At first, the footage was static and breath. Then, color, sound, movement. The video showed Officer Mark Cole, recorded from a chest-mounted camera. He was driving through rain, dashboard lights reflecting off his pale blue eyes. The date stamp read 6 months ago. Mark looked younger than Daniel remembered. Early 30s, square jaw, steady gaze, the quiet confidence of a man who believed rules could still save people. His voice, even through the static, carried warmth. "Unit 12 responding to call out near Northridge Birthing Center," he said into the radio. "Unregistered vehicle on site after hours." Pierce's face tightened. That's the night he died. The camera jostled as Mark stepped from the cruiser. Rain became harder, turning the gravel into glass. A faint whimper, then barking. The footage turned toward Bella, younger, healthy, alert beside him. "Easy, girl," Mark said. "Let's see what we've got." They entered the building. Dark, abandoned except for the rhythmic hum of machinery still running somewhere deep inside. Mark's flashlight swept over overturned bassinets, and files scattered across the floor. Then a door ajar, light bleeding from underneath. He pushed it open. Inside was a storage room filled with incubators, not empty, occupied. Infants, sleeping or sedated, each tagged with numbered bracelets. "What the—" Mark breathed. Then a second voice answered from behind the camera's field of view, calm, deliberate. "You weren't supposed to see this, Cole." The flashlight swung. Sergeant Jared Hanks stood in the doorway, gun drawn but lowered. "Put it down, Jared," Mark said, voice tight. "What the hell is this?" Hanks didn't move. You think you know what's right because you wear the badge cleaner, but the system's rotten. These kids were marked to disappear anyway. We're making sure they end up where they're wanted." "That's trafficking," Mark said. "That's murder in slow motion." Hanks's jaw flexed. "It's survival. The program's bigger than me, bigger than you. Walk away." Bella growled. Mark shook his head. "You know I can't." The screen jolted as gunfire erupted. The image blurred, spinning, the camera catching only flashes. Bella lunging, Mark falling, Hanks shouting something lost to the echo. Smoke, light, screaming metal. Then black. The playback stopped. No one spoke for a long moment. The hum of the laptop filled the silence like a heartbeat. Daniel exhaled. He recorded his own murder. Alvarez rubbed a hand over his face. And the evidence never left that room, until his dog brought it home. Pierce nodded slowly. Bella must have escaped the blast, carrying what she could. She kept the body cam card hidden in his trauma bag. She didn't just survive. She delivered proof. Daniel's throat tightened. And the baby? Pierce picked up the second evidence bag. That's where it gets worse. She inserted the micro drive into the reader. Another window opened, showing rows of encrypted folders labeled only by initials and dates. One stood out, EC0223. Pierce clicked it. Inside were video clips, short, clinical, all shot in the same sterile room. Each showed an infant being swaddled, scanned, and handed off to a person in civilian clothing. The camera angle never revealed faces, only hands exchanging envelopes and papers. Carrie, who had slipped in silently behind them, covered her mouth. "They sold them." "Adoptions under the table," Alvarez muttered. "But with medical tracking, experimental tags, this is more than money." Pierce zoomed in on one frame, freezing the image. A clipboard came briefly into view. On it, Northridge Project, Genomic Stability Trials. Daniel blinked. "Trials? On newborns?" Pierce's jaw tightened. "Looks like someone tried to resurrect a classified biogenetics program, testing immunity patterns in infants. The Cole baby might be one of them." Carrie whispered, "Emma." Pierce nodded. "Yes. Her code matches the same prefix." Daniel stepped away. From the screen, hands gripping the back of a chair. So Mark found this operation, tried to stop it, and they killed him. His dog escaped with the proof, and the only surviving infant. Alvarez's voice dropped. "And now they want the evidence back." Silence fell again, heavy as the snow outside. Finally, Pierce straightened. "We get this data to the Bureau quietly. No chatter, no press. If Moore's still out there, he'll assume the storm erased everything. That gives us time." Alvarez nodded. "I'll move Walker to another wing. No uniforms near the NICU except Carrie and Dr. Harris." Daniel looked at the screen one last time. The final frame still showed Mark's outstretched hand reaching toward Bella before the footage cut to black. "He didn't just trust the system," Daniel said softly. "He trusted her." Pierce packed the drive into a lead-lined bag. And she didn't fail him. That evening, as the sky bruised purple again, Daniel sat beside Bella's bed. The shepherd's eyes opened when he entered. He smiled faintly. "You did it, girl. You really did it." Her tail brushed the sheet weakly. Daniel placed a hand on her head, feeling the warmth beneath the bandages. "They'll come for her again, won't they?" he said quietly, mostly to himself. From the doorway, Pierce answered, "Yes, but now they'll find more than a storm waiting." Daniel looked back at Bella. "Rest while you can," he whispered. "We'll need you again soon." Outside, sirens faded into distance, replaced by the slow, thawing drip of icicles. The long night was over, but what it revealed had only begun to matter. By mid-morning, the storm had become a rumor, thin clouds drifting like ghosts above Pine Creek. The world had gone white and still, but inside the hospital the air felt heavier, charged with secrets that refused to stay buried. Dr. Daniel Harris hadn't slept. He sat by the window of the small break room, watching sunlight struggle across the snow. The coffee in his cup had gone cold hours ago, but his mind kept replaying what they'd seen on the footage. Mark Cole, the children, Sergeant Hanks's betrayal. Bella lay on a blanket nearby, awake but still weak. Her head rested between her paws, one ear twitching whenever someone passed the hall. Daniel had cleaned her wound again that morning. The stitches were holding. The painkillers dulled her eyes but not her alertness. When Agent Lauren Pierce entered, the shepherd lifted her head immediately, as if she recognized the rhythm of Pierce's boots. "She's recovering faster than expected," Pierce said softly. "That's either training or stubbornness." "Both," Daniel said. "Mark used to say she didn't know how to quit." Pierce placed a folder on the table. "We've identified the man from the badge backplate, Sergeant Jared Hanks. His personnel file was wiped 2 days after Cole's death. Someone high up made it disappear. And guess who signed the clearance order?" Daniel looked up. "Who?" Pierce flipped the folder open. A typed name stared back. Chief Deputy Raymond Voss. Daniel frowned. "Voss? He's been Alvarez's second-in-command for over a decade." "Exactly," Pierce said. "And according to the Bureau, he used to handle security contracts for North Ridge Birthing Center before he joined the sheriff's office. My guess? He's the inside man." Daniel leaned back, letting the information sink in. "So, Cole found the trafficking ring. Hanks was running ground ops. Voss covered it from inside law enforcement. When Cole threatened to expose them, they shut him down. And now they're trying to clean the last trail, Emma and the data," Pierce said. The door opened, and Sheriff Tom Alvarez stepped in. He looked older than he had last night. His uniform was pressed, but his eyes told a different story, one of disbelief fighting against loyalty. "I heard the name," Alvarez said quietly. "Ray Voss has been my friend for 20 years. Pierce met his gaze evenly. "He might have been your friend once, but people change when someone pays them enough to forget who they were." Alvarez exhaled, long and slow. "You have proof?" "Not yet," Pierce said. "But I can get it. If the Northridge servers are still online, there'll be access logs. Only a few people could have erased those files. Voss's credentials show multiple remote pings right after the fires." Alvarez rubbed his temples. "So what's your move?" Pierce closed the folder. "We bring him here, quietly. If he's clean, he'll cooperate. If he's dirty..." Bella growled softly, finishing the sentence for her. An hour later, the sheriff's SUV rolled up the icy drive. Voss stepped out, brushing snow from his coat. He was in his late 40s, square-faced, the kind of man who looked like he'd been carved out of the same rock as the county courthouse. His handshake was firm, his smile polite, but his eyes never stopped moving. "Tom," he said with a practiced grin. "Heard you had a hell of a night." Alvarez nodded. "Come inside. There's something you need to see." They led him to the conference room. Pierce had set up the laptop again, frozen on the frame showing Hanks and the infant room. Voss frowned. "What is this?" "Body cam footage," Pierce said. "Officer Mark Cole, the night he died." He leaned closer. "Where'd you get this?" Daniel watched his pupils tighten, his jaw shift. It was subtle, but it was there. "It came home," Alvarez said evenly, "carried by his dog." Voss gave a short, humorless laugh. "You expect me to believe that?" Pierce hit play. The sound filled the room. Mark's voice, Hanks's confession, the gunfire. When the screen went black, the silence that followed was surgical. Voss's fingers twitched on the table. "You can't prove that's real," he said, but the conviction in his tone was thin. Pierce studied him, unblinking. Funny thing, guilt always sounds like denial wearing a badge. Alvarez stepped forward. "Ray, tell me you didn't know. Tell me you didn't sign off on this." Voss's lips pressed into a thin line. "You don't know what you're talking about, Tom. That video could be fake. You think I'd risk everything I built?" "You already did," Daniel said quietly. Voss turned, startled to find the doctor still there. "You should stay out of things you don't understand, Harris." "I understand enough," Daniel said, voice steady. "Mark Cole died trying to stop this. His dog nearly froze saving the evidence. And that baby upstairs, she's what's left of his family. So don't tell me to stay out of it." The room tightened. Pierce folded her arms. "You erased Hanks's personnel file. You rerouted patrol logs the night Cole was killed. We pulled your network history, Ray. You logged into Northridge servers 3 times after midnight, once right after the explosion." Voss's mask cracked. "You think you're so righteous? You don't even know why any of this started." Pierce didn't blink. "Then enlighten us." He hesitated, then laughed bitterly. "They were going to shut down the program. The government spent millions, and when the fires hit, they saw a way to bury it. We didn't start it. We just made sure it didn't die with the flames." "By selling infants?" Daniel asked, disbelief and disgust entwined. Voss slammed his hand against the table. "They weren't supposed to die. They were supposed to be protected, given to families who could keep them safe." "Safe from who?" Pierce demanded. Voss's answer came too slow. "From the people who created them." Silence filled the room again. Pierce's voice softened, the way people talk when they realize the monster still has a heartbeat. "You're saying the babies were engineered?" Voss rubbed his temples, suddenly looking older. "Not engineered, enhanced. Immune markers, regenerative factors. The fires were a cover-up. Northridge wasn't just a birthing center, it was a lab. Cole found out. He wanted to go public." Daniel's pulse quickened. "And you silenced him." Voss met his eyes. "I tried to warn him. Hanks was the one who pulled the trigger. I was supposed to clean the mess, but then the dog disappeared, and the rest—" He laughed, hollow. "I thought the snow took it all." Pierce stepped closer. "You're coming with us. You'll make a statement." Voss shook his head. "You think you can protect that child? You have no idea how high this goes." Before anyone could react, he moved, hand flashing under his coat. Pierce lunged first, knocking his arm aside as a pistol clattered to the floor. Daniel kicked it away, adrenaline cutting through the room like a blade. Alvarez pinned Voss against the wall, fury burning through grief. "You betrayed your oath," Voss sneered. "You still think you can fight them? Your aunt's in a furnace." Pierce snapped cuffs on his wrists. "Maybe, but even ants bite." Hours later, the storm finally broke into sunlight. Deputies transported Voss under armed escort, his warnings trailing behind him like echoes. Pierce and Daniel stood in the corridor outside Bella's recovery room. The shepherd lifted her head, watching them through the glass. "So it's real," Daniel said. "Everything we saw, everything Cole tried to stop." Pierce nodded. "Real enough to kill for, and probably not over." Daniel looked at Bella. "She's the only one who never doubted where to go. She found us." Pierce smiled faintly. "Sometimes the purest compass isn't made of metal." Outside, sunlight struck the snow, and for the first time in days, Pine Creek looked alive again. But beneath the brightness, both of them knew. Light only showed what shadows tried to hide. Night returned to Pine Creek like a memory it didn't want to forget. The storm had passed, but the cold remained. A silence so deep it pressed against the glass of Pine Creek Memorial like another observer. Inside, the halls were quieter than they had been in days. No sirens, no shouts, just the hum of machines and the slow, deliberate rhythm of survival. In the lab room on the second floor, Agent Lauren Pierce stood over a laptop connected to a forensic workstation. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and melted snow. A tangle of wires linked the microdrive and the recovered SD card. Every keystroke echoed louder than it should have. "Decryption's running," she said softly. 256-bit encryption, military grade. Whoever built this didn't want it opened. Across from her, Dr. Daniel Harris rubbed his eyes. "Can you crack it?" Pierce allowed herself a small, humorless smile. Given time and caffeine. On the cot beside them, Bella slept, her muzzle twitching as if chasing something through her dreams. The IV had been removed. Her strength was coming back in waves. Every now and then, her eyes would flick open, tracking Daniel across the room. He leaned down and scratched behind her ear. "Rest, girl. You've earned it." Pierce's laptop chimed. A window blinked open, green lines scrolling like veins of light. "We're in," she murmured. "Let's see what Cole died for." The first folder was labeled NRG Sequence Trials. Inside were PDFs, medical data, charts, genetic matrices. Pierce clicked one at random. Rows of code filled the screen. Allele markers, mutation graphs, notes in the margin written in shorthand. Daniel frowned. "What am I looking at?" "DNA sequencing," Pierce said. "Human, but not standard. See here? Triple helix simulation models, enhanced immune resistance, cellular repair acceleration." Daniel's pulse quickened. They were engineering children. Pierce nodded grimly. Not for strength or speed, for survival. It looks like they were trying to design immune systems that could withstand chemical exposure, radiation, viral decay, even genetic degradation, like they were building the next generation to outlast us. She scrolled further, opening another file. Subject EC02223. Daniel froze. Emma Cole. The document expanded into a detailed report. Lines of code were followed by clinical notes. Subject stable. Genetic viability 94%. Maternal sample terminated. Paternal donor classified. Next evaluation scheduled. Pending relocation. Pierce's voice dropped. "Maternal sample terminated." Daniel swallowed hard. Sarah Cole didn't die in that fire by accident. For a moment, neither spoke. The room seemed smaller. The hum of the fluorescent lights became a heartbeat. Finally, Pierce exhaled. "Daniel, there's something else. Look at the donor column." He leaned in. The text had been partially redacted, but one fragment was visible. Sample 14B, derived from subject MC Zuer Suoan. "MC," Daniel whispered. "Mark Cole." Pierce nodded. He wasn't just her protector. He was her biological father. Daniel leaned back, the revelation hitting him like a physical blow. They used him, took his genetic material, maybe from a medical screening while he was in service, created Emma in that lab, then erased the evidence. And when he found out, Pierce said quietly, they killed him. For a long moment, there was only the sound of Bella stirring on the cot, her claws ticking against the metal frame. Daniel looked at her, his voice barely above a whisper. She's not just his partner anymore. She's what's left of his family. Pierce turned the screen toward him. "That's not all. There's one more video file, labeled Last Entry, MC. Daniel hesitated. "Play it." The image flickered to life. The timestamp showed 2 days before the explosion. Mark Cole sat in a dimly lit room, face pale under fluorescent glare. His hair was damp, his hands trembling just slightly. Behind him, Bella paced, restless. "Whoever finds this," Mark began, his voice hoarse. "You need to know what's happening at Northridge. They're not just taking children, they're making them. Experimenting with DNA from service members, from us. They said it was about saving lives. It's not. It's control." He looked off camera, as if someone else stood just beyond the light. "They told me Sarah's pregnancy was part of a clinical trial. I didn't sign anything. She didn't know. When she found out, they tried to take her in for observation. She ran. That's when the fire started." He drew a shaky breath. "If Bella's still alive, she'll know what to do. She always does." His eyes lifted, steady despite the fear. "This isn't about revenge. It's about one life that still matters. Save the child. Save Emma." The screen went black. Daniel stood frozen, every line of his face caught between grief and awe. He knew he wouldn't make it out. Pierce's voice was quiet. He made sure the truth would. Bella stirred, lifting her head as if hearing her master's name through the static of memory. Her eyes met Daniel's, amber and alive, filled with something deeper than instinct. Daniel knelt beside her. "You did it, girl. You brought her home." Pierce closed the laptop gently. "We can't stay here. Once the Bureau decrypts this drive officially, Voss's arrest will leak. Whoever funded this project will come for the data, and for the baby." Daniel straightened. "Then we move first." "Where?" "To the cabin Mark used to train Bella. It's off-grid, 20 miles north in the ridge. No signal, no road access. We can keep Emma safe until we know who's behind this." Pierce hesitated. "You're asking me to go dark with you." "I'm asking you to keep your promise," Daniel said. "Mark trusted the wrong people. Let's not do the same." For a moment, Pierce just looked at him. Then she nodded once. "I'll prep transport." 2 hours later, the world outside was gray with dawn again. Daniel carried the sleeping infant, swaddled in blankets, close to his chest as Pierce started the SUV. Bella sat in the back seat, bandages clean, eyes fixed on the horizon as if she already knew the route. The hospital receded behind them, its lights small and fading against the endless white. The radio crackled faintly before Pierce switched it off. Silence filled the car, broken only by the rumble of tires over frozen snow. "What happens when we reach the cabin?" she asked. Daniel looked down at the child in his arms. "We give her what her father died for, a chance to be free." Bella gave a soft bark, almost approving. Pierce smiled faintly. "Guess that's settled then." But as they turned onto the old county road, a pair of headlights appeared behind them, distant at first, then growing brighter, faster. Pierce's grip tightened on the wheel. "You expecting company?" Daniel turned, jaw set. "No." The lights swerved, closing the gap. Then came the unmistakable sound of an engine revving hard against the ice. Pierce floored the accelerator. "Looks like someone found our trail." Bella growled low, teeth flashing in the dim light. Daniel held the baby closer, eyes narrowing toward the rear window. "Hold on, girl," he whispered. "Round two's coming." The storm might have passed, but the war wasn't over. The road to the northern ridge twisted through a world frozen still. Pines stood heavy with snow, branches bending like weary arms. The SUV's tires groaned across the packed drifts, headlights cutting tunnels of light through gray fog. Inside, Dr. Daniel Harris kept one eye on the rearview mirror and the other on the baby sleeping in the carrier beside him. "Still behind us?" Agent Lauren Pierce asked, jaw clenched, hands gripping the wheel. Daniel nodded. "About 200 yards. They're not just following. They're waiting." Bella sat upright in the back seat, her breath fogging the glass, eyes locked on the lights behind them. Her bandages had loosened, but her focus was razor sharp. Pierce took a sharp turn onto an old logging road. "They'll lose traction here. Hold on." The SUV bounced over roots and snow berms, the suspension groaning. Behind them, the pursuing truck fishtailed, headlights flaring before vanishing behind the trees. Daniel exhaled. Did we lose them? Pierce slowed, scanning the mirror. Maybe, but we're not stopping till we reach the cabin. They drove another 3 miles in silence. Snow fell again, thin, whispering flakes that seemed too gentle for the violence they'd left behind. The woods thickened, then opened into a small clearing. The cabin appeared, half buried under frost, chimney leaning, roof sagging under white weight. This was Mark's place? Pierce asked. Daniel nodded. He built it after deployment, said it was the only place the world went quiet. They parked beside a rusted truck, half hidden in snow. The air burned their lungs as they stepped out. Daniel carried Emma close, her warmth the only living thing in a world that seemed carved from ice. Bella followed, limping but determined. Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar and ash. Dust blanketed the furniture, but the wood stove still stood ready. Daniel knelt, striking a match. Soon, firelight flickered across the room, painting gold over frost and scars. Pierce set up the laptop on a table. We'll copy everything from the drive. Then I'll send the data to the Bureau once we're safe. Daniel nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. On the road, on the silence that felt too thick, too perfect. They'll come, he said. Voss might be gone, but whoever's funding this won't let us disappear. Pierce met his eyes. Then we make them see what they created. Hours passed. The storm returned, thin but persistent, wind scraping against the windows like old nails. The fire burned low, crackling softly. Bella stirred, ears twitching. Daniel looked up from the fire. What is it, girl? She growled, low, certain. Pierce froze. Movement outside. Daniel grabbed the rifle from the wall. Stay with Emma. He crept toward the window. Through the snow-hazed glass, he saw 2 figures moving among the trees. Slow, deliberate, military in rhythm. They found us, he whispered. Pierce drew her, pistol, eyes narrowing. We hold here. The data's done copying. 10 more minutes. The cabin's door rattled once, then fell silent. Bella's hackles rose. She limped toward the window, tail stiff, eyes locked on the darkness. Then, crack, a single shot shattered the quiet. The lamp exploded in sparks. Pierce dove for cover, firing back through the doorway. Snow exploded outside as return fire shredded the porch railing. Daniel ducked behind the stove, shielding the carrier. 2 shooters! Pierce shouted. Flanking left! Bella lunged toward the open door, but Daniel grabbed her collar. No, stay! She pulled free, defiant, and bolted into the snow. Bella! Outside, the storm swallowed everything. Daniel glimpsed her silhouette charging through white fog, one wounded shepherd against the dark. Gunfire cracked again. Then silence. Pierce! Daniel yelled. I'm going after her. Don't! She started, but he was already out the door. The forest was a blur of wind and powder. Daniel stumbled through drifts, flashlight cutting weak arcs of light. Bella! He shouted. Where are you, girl? A shape moved ahead. A man in tactical gear, rifle raised. Then another sound. A snarl, deep and furious. Bella struck from the side, slamming into the attacker's legs. Both went down hard. The rifle clattered into the snow. Daniel grabbed it, heart hammering. The man groaned, trying to rise, but Bella was faster. She clamped her jaws on his forearm, forcing him down again. Then came another voice, cold, familiar. Step away, Doctor. Daniel turned. Ethan Moore stood 10 feet away, coat whipping in the wind, pistol steady. His face was pale, jaw stitched with an old scar. "You should have stayed out of this," Moore said. "You think you understand what she is? That baby is the future. You're protecting property that doesn't belong to you." Daniel's voice shook, but his hands didn't. "She's not property. She's his daughter." Moore's eyes flicked toward the sound of crying from the cabin. "Then she's proof he succeeded, and that's why she can't live." He raised the pistol. A blur of motion cut between them, Bella charging from the snow. The gun went off once, the sound cracking like thunder. Bella hit him full force, knocking him backward. They crashed into the drift. The weapon skittered away, vanishing beneath the snow. "Bella!" Daniel shouted, sprinting forward. When he reached her, the fight was over. Moore lay still, face turned to the sky, blood dark against the snow. Bella stood above him, panting, her fur matted, a red bloom spreading across her chest. Daniel dropped to his knees. "No, no, no." He pressed his hands to her wound, but the blood came too fast, too warm. "Stay with me, girl. You did it. You're safe." She leaned against him, eyes half closed. The world around them blurred. Snow, smoke, silence. Pierce appeared moments later, breath ragged, gun still raised. She took one look at Bella and stopped cold. "Oh, God," Daniel's voice broke. "She saved us again." Pierce knelt beside him, pressing her hand to the shepherd's flank. "We'll get her back inside." Bella shifted, weakly pushing her nose against Daniel's arm. Her breathing slowed, but her gaze was steady. Amber fire fading toward dawn. Daniel bent close. "It's okay, girl. You kept your promise." Her tail brushed once against the snow. Then she went still. The forest fell silent. Later, the first light of morning spilled through the cabin windows. Emma slept in Daniel's arms, the fire crackling softly nearby. Pierce stood by the doorway, staring at the snow where Bella lay, now covered gently with Mark's old military coat. "She gave everything," Pierce said quietly. Daniel nodded. "That's what they do. They love without keeping score." Pierce turned toward him. "What now?" Daniel looked down at the child in his arms. "We tell her the truth. When she's old enough, she'll know who her father was, and what her mother gave to bring her home." Pierce's voice softened. "And Bella?" Daniel smiled through the ache. "We'll tell her there once was a dog who never stopped believing in the people she loved." Outside, the snow began to fall again, not as storm, but as blessing. Each flake landed on the mound beneath the coat, melting slowly into the earth. And as the fire burned low, the sound of wind through the pines seemed to whisper one last promise. I kept her safe. Sometimes miracles don't come with thunder or light from the heavens. Sometimes they walk on 4 legs through snow and blood, carrying hope in their jaws. Bella didn't just save a child. She reminded us that love still performs miracles every single day. In a world that can feel cold, God still works quietly through loyalty, courage, and the hearts of those who refuse to give up. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes that faith can move mountains and melt even the coldest winter. Leave a comment, tell us where you're watching from, and join our family here at Pause Kingdom, where every story reminds us that love, like God's grace, never truly dies. May the Lord bless you, your family, and every loyal soul who still believes in kindness.